Good day, everyone. Today we will be discussing about the chapter 4 of our CBP Science lecture, which is about matter, its composition, and organization. But before we will proceed with our discussion, let's do some recap or review on the previous chapters that we have discussed. So, in the chapter 1, we talk about the nature of science. What is science? We have also mentioned about the classifications of science, such as pure science, applied science, and we have technology. We also determine or identify the main branches of science, such as natural science, and we have social science. In the chapter 2, we have discussed about the scientific methods or the steps in scientific method such as observation, background research, formulating hypothesis, experimentation, analysis, conclusion, and lastly we have recommendation. As to the chapter 3, I divided it into part 1 and part 2. So for the part 1, we described what is a measurement. That again, measurement has two components, a magnitude and a unit. We also discussed about the systems of measurement as we focused on the International System of Units or the SI units, which have the basic units such as we have volume, temperature, mass, length, and others. And in that note or in that topic about the basic units such as that of the temperature, we discussed also how to convert one temperature scale into another scale by using the three equations given. And for the part 2, we discussed how to convert one unit to another unit using conversion factors. And also, we also determine the counting of significant figures in a given measurement as well as how to write it into scientific notation. Now, let's proceed with the chapter 4. Again, it talks about matter, its composition, and organization. Now, from the title itself, matter, this term is not new to you, right? So, pag mingon taog matter, what comes in your mind? Matter na siya. So we will be talking about chemistry because chemistry is a branch of science that involves the study of the composition, structure, and properties of matter. Or we can say that chemistry is the study of matter. Now the question is, what is matter? Unsa day ni si matter? Now, this term again is not new to you because kani siya nga term kay usually memorize gid ni siya sa mga estudyante, right? So when you talk about matter, it is any substance or anything that has a mass and takes up space or anything that occupies space and has a mass. So in this picture, these are examples of matter. They are composed of matter. Or we can say that everything that around us or surrounds us are composed of matter. Now, since our focus is about matter, matter has states or phases. Now, in this picture, can you identify the states or phases of matter in the example? Like water, sandwich, computer, this spider, this person, and then this iron. What are their states of matter, or in what states of matter sila. So just for example, kaning water, unsa ka siya nga state of matter? How about this computer? How about the heat of the sun? How about the air nga naa diri nga environment? Now, states of matter, again, we have solid, liquid, gas, and then we have plasma. So let's start with solid. Solid has a definite volume and definite shape. So meaning we can identify or we can measure the volume and also we can determine the shape of a solid. Fixed iyahang volume and shape. In terms of iyahang particles, they are held together in fixed position, or they are tightly packed together, or they are very close to each other. The particles are close to each other, or what dikit-dikit ang mga particles. So we'll elaborate that one later. And in terms of their motion, since they are closely together, so their motion is restricted, meaning they cannot easily move or they cannot move. So most solids expand lightly when heated. Now, going back to the picture, so we can say one example of solid is this computer, right? Now, let's proceed with another states of matter. We have liquid. Now, liquid, in terms of volume and shape, ang iyahang volume, the same with sa solid, which is fixed or definite, but in terms of iyahang shape, it depends on the container kung aha siya ibutang. So, dili fixed iyahang shape, it depends kung aha mo ibutang ang liquid. So in terms of the particles, they can free to move because they are held together less tightly. Or they can slide or move past each other. Unlike sa solid that restricted gyud ilahang motion, si liquid na sila'y ability to flow. Just like for example, in the picture we have water. So water is considered as liquid because the particles can move past each other or they can slide. That is why water is flowing. And also, it is very slightly compressible. Dili kay siya tawag ani makompress. But with the solid, compressible ang solid. Pwede siya makompress kay naka kuan man ihang mga particles in fixed position. So the third states of matter is we have gas. So gas has neither a fixed volume nor shape because its particles are far apart. So si gas, wala siya fixed nga volume, wala po siya fixed nga shape. Unlike sa solid o liquid. And in terms of the particles, this time, ang particles are very afar from each other that they can freely move or naa sila complete freedom of motion. Dili restricted ilahang motion. And then it is highly compressible. Just for example, in here sa picture we have the air nga naa diri sa environment is considered as gas. Now next, the last one is we have plasma. So plasma is either a gaseous or liquid state of matter. So pwede siya mag-exist as a gaseous state or in a liquid state in which a part of all the atoms or molecules, take note, atoms mao na ang nag-compose sa matter, di ba? We have matter. Si matter nag-compose siya og atoms are stripped off of electrons to form positive ions and negative and electrons, or therefore kaning plasma, they exist in superheated gaseous state, or meaning the temperature kaning mga plasma, they exist in extreme temperature or very high na temperature. That is why they are super energetic, and then they are composed of charged particles. You have positive ions and negative ions or electrons. And examples of plasma, we have solar wind, we have lightning, we have fluorescent light, solar wind, nuclear fireball, or example nato is the recent katong phenomenon nga nahitabo sa Lebanon, sa Beirut, wherein there is a explosion. So kato siya is pwede to ang kuan ato states of matter is it exists in plasma because very high or grabe ang temperature ato. Now, to elaborate more, we have here a figure of the states of matter. So you have solid. Example is we have a diamond. So again, the particles are closely packed together or they are very connected that ilahang motion dili kay sila ka move. And then we have juice as example of liquid. So ang mga liquid slightly kuan sila packed together or meaning naa sila'y ability to flow, maka-flow or maka-move gihapon sila, pwede sila mo slide each other. And then we have gas. Example, we have the clouds or the atmosphere nato. So the particles are very far from each other. That is why they can freely move. Tapos, we have the fourth one, the plasma, contains negative and positive ions and electrons or charged particles. Example, mga neon signs, fluorescent lights, nuclear, fireball or explosion, kana. And in here, as you can see, the movement or flow of temperature, the arrow points into padulong sa plasma. So that is why plasma na state of matter is in high temperature because ang iyahang temperature is greater than that of the other states of matter. Now, as you can see here, na ay mga tawag ani changes or pwede mag-transfer or mo change from one state to another state ang mga states of matter. So for example, solid will transform into liquid, so that is what we call melting. Example, an ice cube. So ang ice cube is solid and then it will melt, becomes liquid. So likewise, liquid can turns into a solid. So for example, water or ice water will freeze and then will become again a solid or the ice cube. And then for liquid, it can turn into gas or becomes gas. That is what we call vaporization. For example, the water will evaporate and becomes gas. And then, likewise, ang gas, pwede po siya mahimong liquid. That is what we call condensation. For example, rain. So, ni-evaporate man to siya, so becomes gas. And then after condensation process, it will become liquid or rain. So, for the gas also, pag mo undergo siya og ionization, ionization is wherein ang atom or molecules kay mag-acquire or makakuha og negative or positive charge by the electrons nga ilahang makuha so that will become into plasma state. So, pwede pod ang plasma mo lower iyahang temperature o katong iyahang mga electrons, pwede siya mahimong gas. So, that is for the states of matter. Now, aside from the states or phases of matter, matter also can be described in terms of their properties. Or pwede na to describe ang matter in terms of physical properties and chemical properties. So in here, in this figure, we have this one and this chopping of wood, and then this is a burning of wood. So we can describe the properties of matter here and also here. But take note, there is a difference. So let's start with physical properties of matter. Now, when we talk about physical properties, these properties or characteristics can be observed without changing the composition of the substance. So, going back to the picture, so for example, chopping of the wood. So, we chop the wood into smaller sizes. So, therefore, ang iyahang properties or characteristic, we can still observe it, and the wood is still the same nga wood gihapon siya. So that is physical properties. So take note again, physical properties is the one that we can observe or we can measure. So physical properties comes into two. We have intensive properties or extensive properties. Now, if we talk about intensive properties, these are properties that do not depend on the amount of the sample. But if we talk about extensive properties, it depends on the amount of the sample. Take note again, intensive properties, dili siya mag-depend sa amount of sample. Meaning, if ma-change ang amount sa sample or object nato, while dili siya ma-change kaning mga intensive properties. Again, if na changes sa amount sa sample or object, kaning intensive properties will remain the same. But for extensive properties, if there is a change in amount, ma-change pod ang extensive properties niya. Examples of intensive properties, we have boiling point. Melting point, we have color, odor, and we have texture. For example, nato sa boiling point, the boiling point of water is 100 degrees Celsius, right? So if you boil a glass of water and then a pot of water, still pag moabot na siya og mo reach na siya into padulong og 100 degrees Celsius, the same parihas mo boil sila into 100 degrees Celsius despite the amount nga imuhang gi-change. Glass of water and pot of water. Lahi silag amount pero in terms of boiling point, parihas sila, dili ma-change. Likewise with melting point and also with color. For example, in color, we have, baliktad diri sa picture, we have the wood. So even though you chop the wood into pieces, still the color of the wood kay wala na change. So color is an intensive properties. And also in terms of odor, and we have texture. So the wood, still iyahang texture, kung rough na iyahang texture, still rough gihapon even though nangagagmay na iyahang sizes. Now, let's proceed with extensive properties. Kaning extensive properties, by the time nga ma-change na iyahang amount sa sample, ang extensive properties mo follow pod or ma-change pod siya. So we have mass, volume, length, weight, size, shape, and we have hardness. So in terms of mass, take note in the chapter 3, we've discussed what is mass. It is the amount of matter present in an object. Volume, the space occupied by the matter. Length, distance, kani in relation to the presence of gravity. We have the size, shape, hardness again. So for example nato in mass. So we have in here, so the wood, kung wala pa siya na chop or wala pa siya na himong nangagagmay iyahang sizes, as whole pa siya, iyahang mass is mas higher or mas greater iyang mass. But by the time nga ato na siyang gi-change iyang amount, gigagmay nato siya, ang iyahang mga mass niya is lesser na or nigamay na iyahang tawag ani iyahang mass. So that is an example. So for volume also, we have 1 liter of Coke. So 1 liter iyahang volume, right? Tapos imuhang giimnan og kuhaan nimo ang 1 liter og 1 glass. So iyahang volume ma-change na, right? So length pod gihapon. So if you have a stick, tapos ang stick 5 for example, ang stick is 1 meter. And then gi-half nimo siya into 2, himo nimong duha. So iyahang length ma-change. And example nato, we have this pitcher of milk, and then we have glass. So the pitcher and glass both contain milk. Tama? So ang pitcher na siya milk, and then glass na po siya milk. The pitcher holds approximately 2 quarts, and the glass will hold about 8 ounces of milk. The same milk is in each container. So the same milk podra, and the only difference is that the amount of milk contained in the glass and in the pitcher. So lahi ang amount of milk na sa pitcher, and also with the amount of milk in the glass. So therefore, we're talking about the amount of milk sa duha. Or specifically, we are referring to the volume of the milk. So therefore, since amount of milk atong ginahisgutan or the volume, this is an example of extensive property. Extensive, if you change the amount, the property will definitely change. But the color of the milk in the pitcher and in the glass and iyahang odor is still the same. So therefore, bahalag ato ang gi-change or gi-transfer nato ang milk sa glass, walay na change sa iyahang color and odor. Therefore, we are talking about intensive properties. Now, we are done with the physical properties of matter. Let's proceed with the other properties of matter. So we have chemical properties. Now, when we talk about chemical properties, kani siya mag-exhibit na siya or mo-show na siya og changes sa composition or malahi na ang characteristics or ang substance or ang object. So how can we identify the chemical properties of an object? So naatay mga characteristic listed here. Start with ability to change in odor. So if there is a change in odor, that is chemical properties of matter. Example, if fresh coconut milk, ma-expose na siya pila ka adlaw, 'di ba, the odor of the fresh coconut milk will be smells unpleasant or meaning baho siya. So therefore, nalahi na ang kaning fresh coconut milk. So that is a characteristics of chemical properties. Aside from ma-change yung odor, ability also to change in color. So pag ma-change iyahang color. Example is when silver tarnished and turns from a yellowish tint to deep yellow and even black. Or for example na to a spoon. So ang spoon ni kuan na siya ni taya. So makita nato from a silver na spoon which is grayish ang iyahang color, and then it will turns into another color, mo change siya into color. So that is already chemical properties of matter. Another one is ability to form gas. So ability to form gas, example nato is when vinegar is added to sodium bicarbonate, bubbles are formed. So if i-mix nato ang vinegar with a sodium bicarbonate, na ay mo form nga mga bubbles. So dili na siya ang original nga substance. So there is a change. So that is already what we call chemical properties, ability to form gas. Next, we have ability to give off light and heat. Pag naay ma-produce nga light o heat, that is a chemical properties of matter. Example is lighting a fireworks. Diba? For example nato, fireworks comes originally into powder. Diba? Powder pa man na sila ang fireworks. And then when you i-light na nimo ang fireworks, and then after that mo produce or muhatag na siya og light og heat. So that is already chemical properties. Another one, lastly, is ability to form precipitate. Again, if you mixed vinegar with milk, na ay ma-form nga mga precipitate or mga part niya sa taas, above it, that changes the composition of the two substance. So that is what we call chemical properties. So take note again, sa physical properties kanya siya ma-observe nato. We can observe it physically nga dili without changing the composition. The substance or the object dili ma-change. Kung unsa ang original nato nga substance, remain gihapon siya. Naay mga changes but the composition itself is dili ma-change. But pag moingon tag chemical properties, ma-change gyud ang composition sa isa ka substance or object. Or kaning chemical properties by the given characteristic niya, ma-connect nato siya with the changes of matter wherein they can undergo chemical reactions because ability to change in odor, color, gas, give of light and heat, and then forming precipitate, those are mga processes nga ni-undergo og chemical reactions. Now, since nag-mention ta og changes in matter, let's proceed. Changes in matter. So see matter, aside from na siya states, four states, again, we have solid, liquid, gas, and plasma. Matter also has two properties. We have physical and chemical properties. Matter also can undergo changes. So in here, in this example, or in this figure, we have breaking glass, slicing bread, mixing Kool-Aid packets with water, burning wood, and so on are example of mga changes in matter. But changes in matter comes into two. It could be physical change or a chemical change. So how can we differentiate or how can we determine which of these examples kay physical change siya or in a chemical change siya? So when we talk about physical change, matter changes form but not chemical identity. Ni change ang form sa matter or the object, but iyahang chemical identity or composition niya, wala na change. Or again, the same with the physical properties, ang change niya is wala niya na change ang original nga composition sa substance or matter. But when we talk about chemical change, again, naay gitawag og chemical reactions nga nahitabo and naay na-produce nga bag-o nga products or substance gikan sa original nga mga substance. Or therefore, there is a change in composition related dito sa atong gidiscuss nga chemical properties. So example nato in physical changes, we have melting ice. So ang ice, mo melt man na siya, mo transfer siya or mo transpose siya from a solid state into liquid state, but the composition is still the same. Water gihapon siya. Like, right? Chopping of wood. So if you chop the wood into pieces, still the composition of the wood naa gihapon, wood gihapon siya. Shredding of paper. Ang na-change lang is iyahang sizes or shape niya. But still the same paper gihapon. As well as with mixing gray and green marbles. If you mix the two, still they are marbles. And for chemical changes, we have burning of wood. So in here, if you burn the wood, it will become ashes. So dili na siya wood. It turns into ashes. Nalahi na yung color, composition niya. New product na siya or new substance. Rotting banana or ngalata nga saging, for example. So malahi na iyahang odor, tama? Malahi na iyang color. So that is an example of chemical change. Mixing vinegar and baking soda. So na yung mga ma-form diha ng mga koan, tawag ani precipitate. Fireworks. So chemical change, as we mentioned in chemical properties. First, kung wala pa nato gi-light ang tawag ani fireworks, naa pa siya into powder pa siya, tama? So powder. So ato nang kuanan og light. So muinit man na siya and then mo produce og light. So dili na siya tong powder originally. Na change na yang composition. So that is why it is what we called as chemical change ang iyahang undergo. So balik ta sa picture. Breaking of glass. Physical change or chemical change? So definitely physical change, tama? Because even though kaning glass na nga kuan siya into pieces, still the composition is the same, glass gihapon. Freezing a popsicle, the same gihapon, right? Baka i-freeze na to ang popsicle still, the taste niya, the color, composition niya is the same. Spoiling milk. So kani siya, this is already chemical change. Because mag-differ na ang tawag ani, odor, baho, pwede pod ang color, malahi na. Pwede pod na yung mga precipitate nga ma-form or bubbles. And then, mowing the grass. So if we mow the grass, still, the composition of the grass is the same. So physical, change gahapon siya. And then slicing of bread. So we just have to slice the bread. So meaning, nalahi lang is the size niya or the mass, but the composition is the same. Bread gihapon siya. Roasting marshmallows. Still, ma-change siya. So pwede siya chemical change. Kaya himan siya. We have an egg. If atong ahang i-break ang egg, so the same gihapon siya, physical change. Exploding fireworks, so chemical change na siya because na ma-produce from powder, mahimo siya og light and makaproduce og heat. So we have mixing Kool-Aid packets with water. So still physical change man siya because ang iyang taste the same gihapon, nalahi lang siya na himuong liquid. Squeezing an orange for juice, still physical change. Evaporating water, still evaporating water from liquid to gas man siya, but the composition niya is na mga changes. Okay? And then burning toast and bleaching, coloring hair and all. So those are what they call changes in matter. So I think that's conclude our discussion for the chapter 4. By the way, this is the part 1 because there is a continuation of this chapter 4 lecture. So thank you and God bless. For clarifications or questions, please message me, or if you can come, if you have time, you can come and ask for assistance or questions or clarifications regarding about the topic. And please like and subscribe. Once again, good day everyone.